Hello, welcome to RideHive 2023. This panel is titled AI-Generated Content and Publishing and is subtitled Panel Most Likely to Cause a Flame War in the Comments. I'm your moderator for this panel, Tim Boffman Jr. I am a writer of science fiction and dystopia with a series centered around artificial intelligence and robotics. I volunteered to moderate this panel not only because of my interest in the field itself, but also through the expertise of the folks on this panel. It will hopefully allow me to know how soon I will be out of a writing job because of AI and have to begin performing manual labor, which I am certainly not built for. With me today, I have four wonderful panelists, and I do want to take a moment to introduce those folks now before we get into active discussion and questions. So I will begin with Evan Mylonas. He is the writer of the speculative fiction novel The Hush. His short stories have appeared on Clarkesworld, Fusion Fragment, and On Spec. Hailing from Athens, Greece, he has spent the last couple of decades traveling and working through the world. In that time, he's tended to wounded loggerhead turtles, baked bread for a Michelin star restaurant, and written dialogue for video games. A marine biologist by training, he's an advocate for the climate cause, sustainable living, and anti-corporatism, which inspire his unique brand of literary sci-fi. Currently resides outside Copenhagen, Denmark, next to a forest, and he spends his time running trails, hiking paths, and climbing rocks. Hello to you today.
Thank you. Really nice being here. I'm very excited and very much looking forward to this discussion that has ruffled a few feathers, so flame on.
Next, we have Elle Marie Wood. Elle Marie Wood is a two-time Bram Stoker Award and Riesling-nominated author, screenwriter, essayist, and poet. She writes high-concept fiction that includes elements of psychological horror, mystery, dark fantasy, and romance. Wood is also a Myco Award winner and the founder of the Speculative Fiction Academy, an English and creative writing professor, and a horror scholar. Learn more at elmariewood.com. Hello to you this morning.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Next on our panel is Andy Dibble. Andy writes from Madison, Wisconsin, and works as a healthcare IT consultant. He has supported the electronic medical records of large healthcare systems in 6 countries. He holds a master's degree of theological studies from Harvard Divinity School, as well as degrees in computer science, philosophy, religious studies, and Asian studies. His fiction appears in Writers of the Future, Diabolical Plots, Mysterion, Sci-Fi Journal, and others. He edited Strange Religion, speculative fiction of spirituality, belief, and practice, which won the best anthology in the 2022 Critters Readers poll. You can find him at andydibble.com. Hello, Andy.
Hey, I'm looking forward to this.
Last but certainly not least, we have York Campbell. York is the host of Welcome to Earth Stories, a science fiction audio drama. He's also the producer and editor of Beta Reader Bits. He is originally from Jamaica and currently lives in Ottawa, Canada. York, hello today.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm grateful to be here.
Wonderful. So we'll jump right into it, and I'm going to ask what is probably just some baseline setting for the readers, as I know that there's probably folks with different levels of knowledge about AI, both in general and within the content publishing spaces. I want to just kind of go around and get what each of you think that we, both myself and then those who are watching or listening to this panel, what do you think we should know about AI generated content as kind of a baseline to set our discussion today?
Well, I think that, and we'll get into this debate, right?
Sure.
AI content is generated by culling copywritten materials out in the world, but then there is no way to properly cite or recognize any of that other, or the material that's been pulled from, because it's a conglomeration of all the stuff. And I think that that is a really, really important thing to remember, especially in the academic space. In fact, I had a student do a presentation on this just yesterday, and we talked about, the fact that you can't cite the source. You can cite the tool, but you can't cite the source. And so therefore the people who created the material that is helping to formulate this thing, whatever the end product is, are not getting acknowledgement, and certainly not getting any royalties or monies associated with that. So just that's if I wanted to bring up something to start the conversation with, that is something to remember and keep them in the forefront of your mind.
York, I'll go to you next. What do you think is important to know about AI generated content?
I think it's important to know that it's artificial. It's not authentic. And it could be used as a tool to help you, but it shouldn't be used as a tool to overtake everything that you're doing as an author, as a content creator. It's there as a guide. It could be weaponized. All right. There's also dangers with it as well. It's sort of like using the force. There's a good side of AI, and then there's a dark side of AI. And it's up to you to know the difference.
York just gave the answer of the day just now. It's like using the force. I mean, we need to write that down.
I'm going to wait for AI to throw me into a wall with lightning bolts then. We'll go to you next, Andy.
So yeah, kind of launching off what El-Marie said. I mean, AI content is the product of sophisticated mimicry. So AI has been through most, maybe all of the public internet. Found a lot of statistical relationships between words. Develop concepts about those words, and then generates a statistically likely response given the input it's been provided. I actually read an interesting article about a linguist, I think at Stanford, several weeks ago, named Emily Bender. And her idea actually is that AI is like advanced bullshitting. The idea here being that it has no kind of, it has concepts of truth, but truth doesn't regulate its speech like it regulates our speech. It's not, trying to produce utterances that actually map to the world. It's just trying to produce utterances that are similar in some important sense to what it's already seen. And that could be true or false. It's bullshitting.
And last but not least, Devin, I'll come to you. What do you think is important for us to know kind of as a starting point?
There are a couple of things that I think everybody has pretty much mentioned. What is the technical background? Essentially, you have a piece of software that reaches out into a big lake of data and just takes bits and pieces and collates them together in using some sort of algorithm. Advanced bullshitter, like Andy said. I think I'm going to call it myself. There are a couple of considerations to me. One of them is this ethical in the sense that, as other people have said, essentially we're talking about sampling what other people have created, unacknowledged, potentially copyright material, putting it together and passing it off as something original. You could argue that we're having exactly the same kind of conversation as the discourse that took place in hip hop with sampling. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, but obviously I'm very interested in everybody's opinion. I think it's a little bit more complicated, more nuanced than that. But in addition to that, I'm personally terrified by the prospect of the industrial revolution being brought and imposed on artistry, because this is the first time in history where the process of art, the process of creation, has been taken away from the hands of the artist and been put into the hands of corporations. Because we are talking about an automation tool. We are talking about something that can be owned by either a government, with whatever that means, and I'm fairly certain that governments have never ever done anything bad in the existence of humankind. So I guess we're safe there. Corporations, we all know that we can trust them, right? So absolutely. So this is really something that worries me on an ideological level. And also, since when has ring fencing something for capitalism created a thing of beauty? Just to get into a more philosophical level. But on the other hand, I'm personally finding AI to be a wonderful assistant. So AI probably isn't going anywhere, regardless of what a lot of its attackers would like. So let's have a discussion and see whether or not we can either work with it, or whether or not we need to go all rebellion against the Skynet and basically wipe it off the face of the earth.
So you all brought up interesting points. I want to circle back to a couple of them. Elmarie, if you wouldn't mind, I want to start with yours, because you brought up the idea of using AI in the realm of academics. And one of the things that I remember very vividly as I was going through school was, admittedly, in a little bit of a different circumstance, Wikipedia should not be your end-all be-all for, writing web. Now, I understand that there are different regulations to a certain extent around Wikipedia. Wikipedia has cited sources as a general rule at the bottom of their pages, and they often provide context to those sources. I recognize that it is not a perfectly analogous comparison to AI. Do you think that we will be looking back at the early days of AI and academics, that we're going through now, much in the same way that somebody who is 15 years removed from high school now looks back at the discussions around Wikipedia at the time?
Perhaps, but we could even go further back and think about Cliff Notes and Spark Notes and things like that. You're not watching the play, or you're not reading the play. Forget watching the play. I was giving that as an option for some students. But you're not reading the work. You're not, actually going through the work yourself. You're going to Spark Notes or Cliff Notes before Spark Notes, and buying the book from the store, which used to just gall me, even as a student. I don't know, maybe I was that kind of kid, but just you buy the book from the store and you're reading through this thing, and then you're writing based upon someone else's assessment of the material. Now we're finding that students are submitting work created by AI. Their essay is completely, before they would just go to Spark Notes and maybe even copy the thing verbatim and then submit that, and that was so obvious that it was done. Now this is being generated by putting out some sort of a prompt, and then it generates your paper for you. And we're not always catching it. So that's going beyond the Wikipedia. Wikipedia in and of itself has gotten better. Mind you, there's some regulations that have gone into play in the past 10 years, but still in all, you're still going to find some links that are just they're not useful. You can't just, anybody could write. I have a doctorate in English, in creative writing, not in, biology, but I could write a paper. And because I can say doctor, Lisa Wood, PhD, I can say that. You don't know that my doctorate has nothing to do with biology, and I have no reason to write this specific paper at all. I can only write about the stuff I know about, but no one's going to be doing that research, and Wikipedia allows for people to do that. You can still do that. And so therefore it's not something that you should cite. Neither is, this just created document, that's pulled from all other sources. So yes, I think the conversation will be had, but it's going to go even further back to when we were dealing with Cliff Notes, and that was written by whomever. We don't even know who, and I think that the issue is, it appears to be fine. It appears to be a great tool. It's when people are not using it to just be the tool that aids them, and when they're using it as the actual ultimate result of work because they don't want to put the work into it, or they find this to be easier, or whatever the reasoning is. That's when you run into the problem.
Fair enough. And that actually goes into another question I wanted to follow up on. York, you talked about, as you worded it, very Star Wars-y, the light and the dark side of the Force being very much what AI is. And I think that I've heard people just in general kind of look at it that way. Like, there are positives to AI concepts, there are negatives to it. And I don't think that even the most ardent supporters or detractors would argue that AI is 100% good or bad. There are flaws with it, there are benefits to it. I think everyone at least recognizes that as a baseline. As you are looking at, as you are considering AI, do you think that even if it is not currently the case, do you think that ultimately the benefits of AI will outweigh its trepidations, or not?
Well, I look at it from an entertainment point of view because my podcast, Welcome to Earth Stories, is a sci-fi audio drama. It's an anthology series. And so just taking note of what you said, the other day ago, I have 11 labs. It's an AI tool with different voices, AI voices. Also, this tool allows me to copy any celebrity, and it's just crazy. It works really, really good. So I was completing a 1-hour episode of my upcoming show, played it for my wife to see what she thinks with the AI voices, and there was an uneasiness. She couldn't really put her finger on it. It felt real, but not really real. And then she says, well, you know what? You need to go back and you need to hire your voice actors again for this. And so I listened to it as well. She's not a podcaster. She's just a regular person. So I listened to it and I said, yeah, it sounds real, but the emotions is just not there. So I got on my phone, I called my buddies and I said, hey, I need some help with this project. So I got rid of some of the AI voices, cleaned it up a little bit, and now it sounds more authentic, more human-like. And I think that's what's missing. All right. I think that's what's missing from my part of the world, entertainment world, with the AI voices. The emotions is not there. You could almost get it there, but it's not quite there. So I've held back with some of it. I still use it with Welcome to Earth Stories and Beta Reader Bits, another podcast that I produce, but sparingly. I only use it when it's absolutely needed. So that's my take of it. As I said from the jump, I could weaponize it, use it in a dastardly way, and I was tempted to with some celebrities. And then my son tapped me on the shoulder, thankfully, and he said, "Do you really want to do that, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, you're probably right. I shouldn't do that because I don't have the permission of a certain celebrity. So I'll just use what I have so far."
So that's an interesting point to bring up, and I think it ties into something Evan brought up in the concept of sampling, because you look at musical space, and while this is primarily started in the rap and hip hop genres, it is not exclusive to them by any stretch of the imagination. And sampling has been something that has been the subject of great admiration, but also of court cases. You're currently seeing, as of time in which we're recording this, there's a case playing out in New York where Ed Sheeran is being sued for potentially having copied a song or parts of a song by Marvin Gaye. And that is certainly not the only instance of it, but it is the current high profile one. Evan, I want to go back to you. Do you think that, be it in the concept of sampling or what York just brought up with the ability to utilize a celebrity focused AI voice, do you think that falls more into the concept of art, as sampling often does, or do you think that runs more of a copyright / intellectual property risk? Where do you fall on that?
Well, the principle that is used in music is that if it's unrecognizable and if it's used in a way that does not lean into the original, then it's fair use. I guess you could argue the same thing about AI, but that would restrict its use significantly. And in addition to that, when it comes to music, you are still obligated as the creator to acknowledge the original creator of the sample. So if you go into hip hop, if you go into rap liner notes, nobody reads those anymore because everything is streamed these days. It will point out that there's some samples there that were created based on music created by Marvin Gaye or whomever, or Jimi Hendrix. So I'm just going to take a bit of a different path here and mention that there has been a photographer recently that won the Sony Award for photography by using AI, and
you made a good point, and I saw that work, the Sony award, and
Mhm.
it was artificial. I was looking at it. I could tell right off the start that it's artificial. I showed it to
Yeah.
my wife. It looked kind of freaky. I showed it to my colleague at work. He likes it. I like it as well. But I'm weird like that. It looks really, really freaky. But that's the problem, right? And that should not have won the award. But I think the award, I think the person admitted it that it was AI generated.
Oh, yeah.
With the so
But isn't that a
No,
contradiction? If it's AI generated photography, doesn't that indicate photography taken, picture taken? So how is it an AI generated piece that actually won the award? I'm just kind of, I didn't see this piece and now I'm curious about it, but I'm confused as to
here's
how
the
that could
thing.
have happened.
So here's the thing, because the creator didn't accept the award, he basically came out and said, well, this is AI generated. This is not photography. You can call it promptography if you want to, but this does not deserve to win the award. However, in the discussion that ensued, he basically said, I'm all for AI as long as it acknowledges where it's taking its sources from.
Yes.
As long as it says, I'm taking this photograph and that photograph and that photograph and meshing them up together, maybe that should be all right. And by using the same principle with music, if I want to sample Marvin Gaye, I can do that, but I still need to reach out to the estate of Marvin Gaye and get permission and pay what Marvin Gaye is due.
Can I add something here? I think I have a little different perspective. Well, so part of it is that AI here, it's not, typically using a very small number of examples to, generate images or text. It's, it's relying upon, its neural nets have processed a huge amount of information, and a lot of that information has inflected its concepts, and sometimes in small ways, sometimes in large ways. And so its sampling isn't just like these three things. It's like millions of things, and subtle influences here and there. And now, I can't speak on this legally very much. I don't know that much there. And also, I think most of those questions aren't decided that well either. But at least insofar as the sampling here is much more subtle, and relying upon, lots of examples in small ways. I think that is a creative process. But furthermore, imagine there was, a person that could do this, right? They were a savant in some ways. They actually could read, millions of articles or whatever, and, produce new content. This word new is a bit, I guess, debatable, right? But I think if a person was doing this, we wouldn't say that what they're doing is unethical or not creative. It might be illegal, certainly, if they're, if they just happen to spit out a lot of a song, right? If these three stanzas happen to be verbatim, yes, that probably would be illegal and probably unethical too. But generally, AI isn't copying, that much so boldly.
So there is a bit of a difference between the hypothetical person that you're mentioning and AI, because the way that the human brain works, and it has been shown through MRI scans, you can have two people looking at the same picture, but the way that it's imprinted on your brain is subtly different. You and I can be looking at the same red car, but I'm going to remember the same red car differently compared to how you look at it. Which means that when we take all of this literature, all of the same literature, the same experiences, and then we digest them, and then we use that as a basis to create our own art, that will be vastly different because they will be filtered through our own individual neural networks. Now, when we're talking about AI, it works with the same algorithm constantly, all the time. It's the same process. It's a black box, I guess, for us.
AI certainly update their neural nets based upon feedback and new information. I certainly agree. Our algorithms, what humans do and what AI do are not the same. I used to think they were vastly different. Now I think they're just pretty different. But AI certainly don't have to produce, the same content. I mean, it's very common to initialize a neural network randomly. You know, its initial state is totally just random, and you train it. And when you're just randomizing things, it's hard to think that AI are going to produce things, you know, the same way, you know, every time.
If we let's take a hypothetical situation where the AI only works with a sample of one, you.
Okay.
Would that be ethical then?
A sample of like my
one.
writing, or
Yeah.
what about
Yeah.
me?
Basically an AI that only uses your text, only uses your text to sample, so to speak, and generate content. Would that be ethical then? This is an honest question. I haven't made my own mind.
Sure. You know, it's a fair question. Well, I mean, let's assume. Let's assume the AI already knows English, because they probably couldn't learn English just from me. But yeah, even then, right? Yeah, I think in that case, I mean, both legally and ethically, it would be pretty dubious, because its process is just so parasitic on what I produce. It's not you know, synthesizing things, you know, using, you know, a wider creative kind of repertoire.
That's an excellent question. If I could jump in on that one, I mean, because I would say that it's still not something we should be doing. I mean, as an educator, I'm against it, right? There's a thing that you have to cite yourself if you cite a paper that you've written a while ago and you use a phrase out of it. You need to cite yourself. So you can't cite, again, even if the AI is using just you still can't figure out what it's been using to, you know, create this work. But as a creative writer, and, you know, someone who has submitted short stories, and, you know, I remember clearly what it was like to begin and try to crack into that industry. It's really difficult, you know, it's hard to get your first sale. And, you know, it takes a while to really, you know, build a voice that is recognizable to these publishers and, you know, editors who are interested in buying for their, whatever the publication is. So AI will not have its own individual thought. There's no independent thought that AI is going to come up with. So it's going to cull information, even if it's only from me. It could look at everything I've written, and whatever it creates is still artificial. It's not like I wrote those words. It's not like I changed up and said, I'm now creating this story called X, and this X story was written by me directly because I wrote the words. No, AI assumed themes from my past writing and created something that it thinks is right. It's not authentic, and it damages, I think, you know, the material that imagine you have a whole magazine filled with AI work, or an anthology, and that's what you got. And none of this stuff was ever written by a human hand at all. Nothing here. First of all, it'll be ready in 5 minutes, right? You'd be able to have it ready and produce it. It's out in the world selling. And most authors can't produce a viable story in 5 full minutes. That's it, you know? So you're already dealing with a competition that I'm really hoping we can talk about here. Like, you know, a competition of, you know, the author trying to put out work and someone who's using AI and just churning it out. There's literally no way to compete against that.
Exactly.
But
And
you know, you're dealing with that, and then like you said, York, what's so interesting about possibly using actors' voices that are generated by AI? I mean, I immediately thought of like the deep fake videos that were happening. You can literally make anybody do anything if you can figure out deep faking.
Oh, in fact, on one of my episodes, that's what I did. I have an episode called Deep Fake Trailer. And before I did that episode, I was saying to my audience, I said, hey, I'm getting in touch with the ChatGPT and other things. And then I said, I could pretty much just let the AI run the entire show. And on my last episode, that's exactly what I did. I used four voices. That's 3 voices that does not exist. And I wrote the script, and then they just took it over. But I did say, I did say on one of the episodes that it's very tempting to do that. As a podcaster, you could even take your own, in terms of show description, as they call it, because show description on every podcast, it could be tedious. But when it comes to these tools, you could just simply write a sentence, and then the AI will just simply take it from there. And will create all the show notes for you. We'll create the tweets. We'll figure out the SEO and
Mhm.
create emails, and it does the entire thing. And
See.
that was a temptation.
Yeah,
to
and
do
it
that.
sounds very cool. It sounds very
Yeah.
cool as a business owner, right? I mean, it's going to take something off your plate, then just knock it out and it's over with and it's done. But from for me, the human aspect of creativity and creating works that people want to watch, read, look at, it disappears when we add these kinds of things. I mean, you mentioned that your wife thought the voices sounded artificial. I've heard that as well. There's some books on, if you just get books on tape, well, not tape, just date myself, but if you put books on, like Audible and things like that, you can sometimes hear it. Sometimes you can tell. And they're going to get better. They're going to be better, but that's not a human. We're losing that connection. And I feel like there are so many ways in this world that we're losing that human connection, that with creativity, we could maybe keep that, maybe, we lost it with CGI, with all these explosions that happen in movies and the bodies are flinging everywhere. That's not a real body like that. It doesn't move like that. So we lost it a long time ago, and that has continued. You see people being aged. I mean, people were, to go back to Star Wars reference, who's the guy who came back to life in the beginning of the movie? Wasn't even needed. One of the generals.
Oh yeah.
You mean
Peter Cushing. Who was Peter Cushing's role? Doesn't matter. Look it up. It's
Yeah, no,
there.
I know what you mean though.
Peter Cushing came back to life. I think he died in the 80s, and suddenly he was on screen.
That's
and
right.
it threw me because I was like, he's not alive. Wait a minute, he's not alive. I know he's not, right? And I kept looking it up. And why are we doing that? Why are we regenerating? Michael, you can go see Michael Jackson in concert now. Why are we doing that? To me, that's
Money.
where we end up. We lose the humanization.
I agree.
But this is going back into industrialization again, because it all boils down to money.
Yeah.
If a record company can squeeze a few more pennies out of Michael Jackson's corpse, they will do that. Now the question is, do I actually want to listen to an AI aping Michael Jackson? And this is to me, this is kind of connecting to what El-Marie was talking about, which is, even if I get the most profound truth given to me by an AI, does it really matter? I mean, what's the difference getting it from an AI or a parrot? If it doesn't come from a human, what's the point? Now, you could argue that you could put that profound truth on paper and it will sell, but it then becomes a matter of principle. But it will sell. It will sell. So, I mean, what do we do from there onwards? Because I don't think anybody will be able to stop this onslaught of technology. So, does it become then a case of managing the whole situation? Does it become a case of taking a big rubber stamp saying AI on top of every single piece of art? And I'm using this term very loosely. That comes out of an AI. Because then you give people the choice. You give people an option.
But if you're not entrenched in the industry, like if you don't have by the way, his name is Tarkin. I had to look it up. Anyway.
I couldn't think of it either.
I was gone from me. I don't know. But if you're not entrenched in the industry, saying it's CGI, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Tarkin. If saying it's AI, is not really going to mean anything to you. Do you know what I mean? Like I often think about, like, what do my neighbors think? Right, we're in this writing world or this entertainment world, or that even if you're in the art world, and it's a small community, and we're all really focused on whatever the topic is of the day, and we know all the ins and outs. But your average person who just goes to the bookstore or goes to the movies or whatever they're doing and is not like creating or actively involved, just wants to watch whatever it is. They don't care. And then so they're not thinking about that. So they're going to consume whatever looks interesting to them. So that if we all sat here and someone said, okay, we're going to see what can be created by this prompt we come up with at the end of the call, right? Say we did that. And then some really fantastic, like Mission Impossible 10 type of movie comes out of our discussion. They're just going to go see it because it sounds interesting. Not going to care that it was generated by AI rather than any one of our hard time and effort to put in, to create that piece. So
Normally, I would agree. Normally, I would agree for most art forms,
Mhm.
but not for writing. And the reason for that is because there's so many parameters and so many different decisions that need to take place on a sentence by sentence, word for word, page by page basis. We're talking about things such as the use of grammar. We're talking about the use or non-use of punctuation. We're talking about voice. We're talking about, very importantly, we're talking about context, and AI does not get context and never will, because context, we cannot define it as humans.
Mhm.
How can AI do this, right? If I tell you that the sky is
I'm not
gunmetal,
that pessimistic, but well, it's humans are really good at language. And AI used to be just trash at like even considering like 20 words in a row and taking that whole context and think, now it can do better. It can't do a novel, right? It can maybe do 1,000 words or something. And that's just even considering them at all, right? Even that window. Now, I mean, like I have a background in humanities, right? Like I've read Sanskrit very painfully. Yeah, I mean, humans are really, really good at interpreting text, but I mean, AI are still better at like figuring out subtext than they used to be, at figuring out like implications of words. They aren't on a human level, but like it's just given how much AI has advanced in recent years, even like when I learned about AI, it was, there were lots of hard problems with, recognizing faces and learning concepts from, just a few examples. And those problems are huge improvements. So I'm much more modest about where AI is going. There may be some problems that are almost never cracked, but those same problems might get cracked in a big way within 10 years too. It's hard to say.
I'm dealing with a writer currently, and he said to me over the phone, he was excited, I guess. It was a group conversation, a whole bunch of different people, different poets. I'm also a poet. And he was braggadocious and saying that his books are written by AI. And so I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't want to come down on him too much. I was just simply asking him some questions. And I said, well, you know what? Let's just call him Marty. You know what, Marty? That's not his real name. But I said, you got to be very careful of that. I know that you are a writer, and hopefully this is your passion, but this is all AI technology. Got to be careful of the potential lawsuits that's out there, because it's not magic. It comes from somewhere. And also, I should have added this onto the group conversation with him, is that if this is his, is he just in it just for the money, or is he in it because he's a real writer? But that's another whole conversation in of itself. So
And
I
it
just
begs
simply
the
advised
question,
him on
though,
that.
York. That's an excellent point you just made. I'm so sorry, Tim. We're just talking, but
You're fine.
it begs the question, because why would you, if you are a creator, why would you want to use AI to create your work? And not to dig on Marty, but to just in a general sense, if you are an artist, why would you want to generate an AI painting, picture, whatever, graphic, as opposed to creating it yourself? You have likely, before AI was getting better at all this, you have likely put in a lot of hours to hone your skill, get better, try different things. Yes, it's easy. Yes, it's faster, but is it yours? Is it yours?
but we're not talking about artists, we're talking about imposters.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
And
Marty
don't
brought,
care.
York brought up Marty, so I'm going with Marty being happy about his work. And so I'm challenging that, but I agree with you, Evan, totally.
So Evan said early on that like AI can be helpful as like a tool or to assist you with certain parts of writing. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, both like in a business and ethically and legally. I think there's a very good chance that using AI to help you rewrite these two sentences, or help you find better word choice, or change the tone of a passage a little bit, or help you outline. I think there are uses like this that are very legitimate. And like, for instance, I struggle writing description. I have not used AI to help me write description. I kind of want to now, though, because the kinds of things I'm good at, maybe I can focus on that, and then I can have the AI help me with the descriptions, and then I can sell more things because, the kinds of intellectual things I like, people don't want to buy and read without the more fluffy descriptions, that kind of thing. AI human centaurs can maybe do better than AI or humans alone.
No, Andy,
So.
don't give in. Don't give in. All right. Don't bend the knee. Stick to your guns. You are a writer. I was seduced. All right. There was an article, because I enjoy writing articles from time to time. And then I gave in to ChatGPT. I threw in something and then it wrote the whole entire article for me. And then I hit publish. And then I said, wow, now this is, and it was a pretty good article. But I said, no, I am not going to do this anymore because it jeopardizes my creative art form.
Sure.
So sometimes with AI, it forces you to be better, right? Because all this information is out there. So now you have to go one step better than AI. And so that's the challenge, to put more of your voice into it, to become even more expressive. So yeah, Andy, don't give in.
Well, no. I have never ever published anything that I just had AI written entirely. Like my experience with AI is basically just experimentation. Really, I have never produced anything with AI at all. But I think there was a question here of like, what kinds of usage can actually ethically in terms of our creative process actually enhance things. What like, I mean, right now I use a thesaurus to help me find words. I look through a list and I jog my memory to see maybe this word is better. I mean, that's not AI, but if I had an AI just say, oh, here are some things to consider. Like, I don't think. I think that kind of assistance can help you operate on a higher level and potentially be more creative. Again, I should experiment more maybe, but I think there was a space here, a middle ground where AI, and human collaboration, is productive.
Andy, I remember when Evan said that about it being a tool, and I had to think for a second because I don't know that I agree with that. I think that it's a crutch. Whereas a dictionary and a thesaurus are tools. They're not saying, here are the 10 words you should use. It's, I put this word in and this is what spits out. And when we used to have books in our hands, we would flip to the page and read the definition, and it's just, that's a tool. When I think back to school, with the students, and I thank goodness I have not bumped into this a lot, but you have it goes back to that Cliff Notes thing. That's not a tool. That's a crutch. Someone else read the book or watched the play or whatever, and then they wrote their notes out. And if you're trying to be ethical about it, you may not go in and copy all their notes and try and submit it, but you're definitely looking at this. You did not read the text you were assigned. You're looking at this thing to get the feedback and input and concepts explained by this person so that you can write a paper off of their work. There's going to come a time, if AI continues and gets better, that the material that AI is culling from is just going to be AI material. It's not going to be the original creator's material. It's just going to be AI generated from AI. And then what? How do the individual creators ever combat that? If, like I said, I can write something in 5 months, but the AI thing has written 20,000 things in 5 months. And that's all they're doing is culling this AI work. So I was trying to think about it when Evan said that, but I don't think I agree. I have to call it a crutch as opposed to a tool. So
you're saying that any use of AI at all would be a crutch, no matter even if like your use of it is like, just for like these 3 words, I'm trying to figure out how to arrange them right, or like this one sentence, I can't quite get it to work, and so I want some options. Like it's very hard for me to imagine that, like, we need to be so black and white about AI.
I will say this, Andy, I recognize that I should also add to the end of my statement, get off my lawn. I mean, I think I'm becoming crabby in my older age, so perhaps. But yeah, I really feel like because I've been in a situation where I couldn't get those 3 words to work. And so what I did was I put it down, walked away, came back and made those 3 words work after I thought about it, away from it. I think there's something to be said about the creative process, and AI to me has nothing to do with it.
Well, I think saying it's a crush is a little bit too harsh, because even though I was a little bit critical with AI, I still use it in my podcast, Welcome to Earth Stories, for certain characters. I have friends of mine and strangers around the world that helps me with the show. People from Japan and people all around. People from Jamaica, where I'm from. They come in with their voices, and which is really, really helpful. But sometimes I can't get a hold of the person in Japan and I'm stuck. What can I do? So I rely on the voice, not because of a crutch, but she or he, the voice is an assistant. And then, it frames the work. It helps it. So yeah, so you could rely on it as a crutch or as your personal assistant. That's the best way to do it. So yeah, as I said, crutch, a little bit too hard on Andy there.
Okay. Well, yeah, assistant's not bad. That's not okay. Now you got me thinking about something else, York.
Okay.
Evan, I want to come to
Yes,
you with a question, if you wouldn't mind. So one of the things that I've noticed, just as we've talked over the last 40, 50 minutes, I've lost track of time, is that one of the things that is being really driven home here is that the AI that all 4 of you have talked about, that I have talked about through this, and that almost everyone is familiar with, is what is classified as narrow AI. So in a very literal sense, even things like ChatGPT, for all of the information it scours, it is designed to do X thing. In your case, you brought up the AI voices, like they are designed to be able to do that voice recreation. Andy, what you had brought up with the editing, things like tools like Grammarly or whatever, they provide guidance that way, be it through AI or not. It is a narrow focus. There's also this concept of broad AI. And when you think about science fiction in a very basic sense, since there is a wealth of science fiction knowledge on this panel and speculative fiction knowledge on this panel, what we think of in a science fiction sense is what is broad AI. What if artificial intelligence were human-like, or were human, just to grossly oversimplify for sake of discussion? Evan, my question to you, in the event that AI were to make that shift from narrow AI to a broad AI, to a human-like AI, does that change the A, perception of the AI, and B, does it change the ethical implications of AI creating art, to use your wording?
I think I'm going to have really big problems at that point. If that happens, we're looking into giving the AI the responsibility for making much bigger decisions than just art, and I'm afraid that we're going to have much bigger fish to fry than art at that point. But let's stick to art, right? Sure. I honestly don't know. One of my favorite short stories is called Zima Blue, and I think it's also been made into a short on Netflix. And it's talking about a robot that becomes an artist, a very celebrated artist. And it becomes so advanced that at some point it forgets that it used to be a robot and it thinks it's human.
Mm-hmm. I saw that one. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was heart-wrenching. And
yeah, I love Death and Robots, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly. And at that point, we'd start talking about artistry as being defined as the process of trying to say something through metaphor, through narrative, as something that can be claimed by a non-human entity, right? In that case, if say elephants were able to fluently speak English, would that be considered art if they start giving us stories? I think it would. So if we're talking about broad AI, then why shouldn't we be including AI in that definition as well? And I'm saying this is not the hill I'm ever gonna die on. And I haven't made my mind up on this, but it seems like the implications are much, much bigger than what we're talking about today, where we're talking about potentially a piece of software just mimicking or aping a human language. This is a much bigger implication. I would probably approach this with a very open mind and a very healthy dose of fear, to be honest. And I honestly don't know whether I would have a specific opinion, and I don't know whether my opinion would end up evolving over time.
It's good that you have an open mind about it. It's never good to be too close-minded, right? Because opinions change over time. I've had significant opinions, worldviews that has changed in the past 3 or 5 years. And so with AI, it may prove to be a benefit. Now, I don't like the fact that there's some people that are treating this technology, a couple of billionaires, and they said we should hold off on the technology for now because they're thinking of doom and gloom. I don't think it's like that, because the technology is not reached sentient quality. It's not to that point. It's not one of our favorite books or one of our stories, because I write AI stories as well. On my podcast, Welcome to Earth Stories, is full of AI technology, but it's far beyond, and we probably will never get there. We said the same thing. Technology comes and goes in fads. There was the VR technology, virtual reality, back in the 80s, and it's still around, but that kind of wore off a little bit. There's been a lot of hype about certain things. So probably this is just one of those hypes, and then just give it a couple of months, it may just go away. So that's my take of it.
Well, we might be overreacting, or we might just settle into a comfortable groove where we are using maybe AI as an assistant, as a virtual assistant that potentially can do much more than Clippy ever could. That would be the ideal scenario for me, because we gain a tool, not a crutch, but we gain a tool that will make our lives a little bit easier.
Perhaps my perspective on this being a little more rigid is that I'm watching it happen to people in my genre who are submitting stories, and then markets are closing because they're getting an influx. I mean, given, I don't know what the given numbers are, but I don't know, maybe 2,000 submissions for the duration of, I think that's too many. 2,000 is way too many. I'm almost positive that's not what they're getting, but whatever, let's just use it for now. 2,000 submissions for a submission window. And it's like tripling and quadrupling because of, AI. And so I've seen markets just close open submissions and not take any more stories, because they can't figure out what's the AI story, what's the actual author's written word. And I've been in conventions recently where I'm watching these new authors in a panic mode because they don't know how they're going to be able to express their voice and grow and become, A, get published, and B, be not questioned as to whether or not it's their work or not. And so I can understand how difficult that is. And I recognize my perspective, having been a writer for so many years, is different from theirs, because I'm not worried. I'm not personally worried about the open call not taking my submission, because I have a bit of a track record. That's not boastful. I'm saying I've been doing it for a while, and certain editors know what I sound like when I'm writing. But someone brand new they don't have their voice isn't recognizable yet. And so when I say crutch, or when I come off a little bit more rigid, I realize I'm, like I said, to get off my lawn with this. But when I sound like that, it's because I'm watching what actually is happening today. I can see it happening this moment. I'd love to not see this continue. If we can figure out a use for AI that's helpful, but not something that could be submitted in full, then I'd probably, because an outlining tool, sure, that's helpful. The concept of it being like the virtual thesaurus, fine, that's also an additional help. but to have here, I want to write a piece about trees and, you know, their transition during fall, and it's done in 5 minutes, and I can submit that to some collection or anthology looking for stories about trees. That's just detrimental across the board because they are not so poorly written anymore. Let me say that. They're not always so recognizably wrong. They're not misusing grammar. They're not misusing, you know, the word choice. That's not the case anymore. It's gotten better, and that's a concern for me.
Well, where do we start talking about originality, right? Because we mentioned the example where AI copies AI, and it's AI all the way down at some point. And by definition, that means that we're never going to get any original content. Are we foreseeing a near future where there is a ton of noise generated by AI, but then we have the human creators being celebrated because they are gems in the trash heap? I mean, is this the kind of environment that we're going towards?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be, you know, people that want to read content made by people. I mean, the reasons for that are going to vary, right? It could be because people are still good at some skills that AI aren't. It could be because, you know, we just like the authenticity of it, right? Either in some identifiable, tangible way, or just the idea of it, right? That we just like the fact that a human made this. And I mean, I expect there to be more advanced tools for identifying kind of the provenance of content. You know, knowing, you know, what produced it.
Hey, Andy, I like what you said about that. Are we just excited that a human created it? Because there probably is going to come a time when the AI is going to sound exactly like us, and it's going to have the right tone of voice and everything like that. Now, I remember some people were saying, and this is not encouraging for me at all, because I really enjoy science, really enjoy astronomy, those type of things. But some people are saying that, hey, probably robots will land on the moon or on different planets, or drone or some kind of, but not human beings. If that were to happen, I think it would just deflate the human spirit, because we want to see ourselves going beyond the stars. We want to see ourselves actually landing on the Mars surface and exploring the outer realms. I think that's exciting. It's a human spirit. Going back to AI, we want to see ourselves writing those books, performing those songs, rapping, doing all of these things, and rather than just leaving it over to the higher power of advanced technology.
Sure.
So we are almost at the end of our time. I want to give each person just a moment to share any final thoughts they may have on the topic. I'll start with you, El Marie, as you're first on my screen. Any final thoughts you wish to share?
I don't know. I enjoyed this conversation immensely, guys. Too bad we're done. I think that in the end, you know, I said crutch, and I think I still stand by it, but I'll take it back a little bit. York and Andy have, you know, made me think. But I think that AI could be a tool that's useful. I think that human nature is to exploit some things and take it further than we need to. And that is where the problem will exist if we just suddenly think that everything can be, you know, it's like the person who, some new technology thing comes out and they have to be the first on it and have to be everything has to be converted to whatever this new thing is, and they have to do that only and exclusively. I think that there are enough people in the world who are like that, and if AI can generate things that they want in a fashion and a manner that they don't have to put the same effort that they had to put into it before, I think that that's where the problem is going to exist. But if it's just being used as a tool, I mean, I may have my thoughts about it, but it's not necessarily a negative if it's only a tool, but that's not how I see it going.
All right. Andy, any final thoughts from you?
I feel I've kind of been the pro AI voice here, and so I do want to make it clear that I think there are real and significant ethical and legal concerns with AI. I mean, you know, with academic integrity, with automating creativity, with people's jobs, with human meaning. I think that, I mean, there are lots of very weighty concerns here. And as I said, like, in a real sense, AI is bullshitting, like very convincingly. But I just also appreciate, you know, engaging with AI critically and new technology critically, and in a kind of pros cons, you know, how it's a good and bad approach, rather than kind of just one perspective.
York, I'll come to you next.
We need to use what they're calling a safe word. I'll explain quickly. There's been some cases where somebody has called in distress. There was a lady, she was on the radio, and she was saying that the sound of her daughter was on the phone. The daughter said that I'm kidnapped. I need help. They want you to send money. And so this lady was freaking out because that's her daughter on the other end of the line, and she was just about to give over some money. The police got involved. They realized it's just AI technology mimicking the voices. This is not the only incident that happened. So my suggestion to everyone watching is to create a safe word, a family word or a phrase. We just done this just a couple of days ago with my family. So heaven forbid, if I was kidnapped or my son or my wife was kidnapped and they want $1 million, whatever it is, whatever they say, we could just simply, if it's really me, then I'll say the safe word. I'll say the family code, or in the other way around, my wife would say, okay, what's the code? And then if the person doesn't give the code, then just hang up the phone. Unfortunately, that's where the world is coming to. But on the flip side, on the positive side, if you're into the entertainment business, as I am, as a podcaster, then AI could be a really good friend in the time of need.
Right. Last but not least, I'll come to you, Evan.
I wish I had several more hours and a few bottles of wine to share with you so that we can continue this discussion.
Fair.
But I just want to say that no technology is ever truly bad and no technology is ever truly good. It just depends entirely on how you use it. However, we are seeing ourselves at a bit of a watershed moment in history. You go through decades and decades and decades without anything happening, and then suddenly everything happens all at once. And this is where we're at with AI right now. So there's a number of paths ahead of us. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic and say that we might find ourselves in a future where AI is simply a tool that will enhance our creativity. And I'm saying this because my favorite photographers and my favorite classical musicians, they all have their own assistants, and sometimes they don't even bother clicking on the camera anymore. They're basically working on a higher level with concepts and approaches and moods and vibes and philosophy. They don't do the nitty-gritty. They leave that to somebody else. Are we heading this way? I honestly have no idea, and I don't think anybody truly does. I want to approach this with an open mind, mainly because I don't think we have any other option, because AI is not going anywhere. So I would rather approach the inevitable with an open mind and maybe with a bit of optimism, rather than look at it from a more gloomy point of view. And if we ever get under the yoke of Skynet, then please feel free to tell me I told you so.
It'll be me yelling from the back. I've been dragged along this whole path, and I'll be looking at you saying, Evan, I told you. I told you.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
2020.
All right. So for those of you watching this live, I believe we'll have a chat in the Right Hive Con Discord following this for folks to be able to answer questions and whatnot. If you are watching this after the fact, pre-recorded, with this being an AI panel, I think that it is appropriate to tell you to enjoy whatever video the YouTube algorithm gives you next. I want to thank our panelists, Elmarie Wood, Andy Dibble, York Campbell, and Evan Mylonas for joining us today. Thank you for your time, your input, and your guidance on this topic, and have a great day, everyone.
All right, take care.
Thank you, everyone.
So.
Take care, everyone.